Hello, good morning. Andre here from Peak Motorcycles. I'm here at Alan Jeffrey's BMW in Rotherham in the UK, and I'm here because I'm taking my 1250 GS in for its annual service. Now normally when I bring it in, because of the distance from my house, I tend to take something else out for a test ride for a couple of hours while they're doing my bike. So I plan to do that today. So they said that they had everything available except for an S1000RR, so I can't take that out. And after looking through everything that BMW has and things that I haven't ridden yet, I thought I'd try something a bit different. So today this is my first ride on BMW's C400X scooter. So this is a 400cc scooter, which you can just about see behind me. I'll give you a walk round, then I'll go for a bit of a ride, tell you what I think. So this is it, as you can see, it's a scooter. It's a step through, it's a twist and go. It doesn't have a gear lever. It's the BMW C400X, which I guess is a slightly more, well, I suppose it looks a bit more like a GS than the other one, which is the GT. But it doesn't look that much like a GS. Having said that, a few things will be familiar to people. The controls are exactly the same, including the jog wheel, the menu buttons. On this side, I see that I actually have the heated grips and also a heated seat, which is kind of nice. And it has the BMW TFT and keyless ride. So yeah, it's a lot of things about it are very familiar to me compared to my GS. The fuel cap's down there, also keyless. If I come around the front, you can see it has this little screen. It's non-adjustable. It does have the LED lights with the driving lamp, which looks quite good. And one thing which I was very impressed by was that if I push this button in here, the boot opens. Now in here, it's actually quite big, so there's a big space down there for putting things. And then under here, you actually have this big case, which is basically the full size of the seat. Now you can see it's kind of got that rubber bit that's pushed up, and that's for the suspension travel. So when the bike's moving, you can't push that down. But when you're stopped and the suspension won't be going, you can push that down and actually put a helmet in it. So just a really efficient way, if you're having this as a city bike, for being able to store things when you get somewhere. Right, then that's enough talking from me. I'll get on the bike and I'll talk from there instead. So yeah, looking forward to it. It's got blue skies and sunshine, which we don't always have up here at this time of year, 1st of October. But yeah, it should be a fun ride. Right then, so here we go. It's kind of weird not having a... is that a clutch? No, that feels like a brake. That feels like a brake. Probably should have asked about that. But yeah, I'm guessing that maybe one is the front brake, one is the back brake. I'll check with them when I get back. However, for now, no clutch to worry about, no neutral to worry about, just hit the starter. Oh, side stand is down. Side stand does have to be up. Nope. Third time looking. No, maybe the brake has to be on. The brake has to be on. Probably should have asked about that. I have 73 miles. I'm sure I can find some fuel as part of that. So yeah, this is very weird. So I don't actually have to do anything other than just twist the grip and off it should go. Can you tell that I'm not a scooter rider? Well, that's pretty easy. Okay, so the first thing I noticed, and if you're a person who rides a scooter a lot, this probably sounds weird that I'm even mentioning it, but I'm used to sitting on a bike where you have to lift your feet up and put them on the pegs. So to kind of bring your legs up, kind of looking for pegs and realising that, well, there aren't any, is a slightly odd sensation. And having to actually bring them quite a long way inwards, so your legs are actually quite close together. Having said that, they are very well protected from the weather when I look down. I am kind of missing my clutch, which, you know, is something I found when I've ridden the Zero electric bikes. But I'm sure I'll get used to it. So my first bit of a ride today will be on this 50-mile-an-hour stretch of dual carriageway, which will then become briefly a 70-mile-an-hour stretch. And I'm going to do a bit of town riding, and then I'm going to head off for some twisties in the Peak District. So right now, that seems to be doing okay. I'm used to seeing more information on the dash. This isn't really telling me anything other than speed, distance, time of day, temperature, and then I have my automatic driving lights on. Maybe that's enough. It's certainly getting up close to 50 as soon as I twist the throttle a little bit. You don't have that feeling that you do on a geared bike when, you know, you just go up, and at 50 I'd be sitting on my GS at probably 2000 RPM. It is really windy today. I don't know if you can hear that coming through. I didn't really notice it on the way down with the big screen that's on my GS, but on this bike with a smaller screen it's definitely more noticeable. But certainly verdict for cruising at 50 miles an hour is I don't really feel like I'm moving that much. I mean, if it wasn't for the wind, this would be a very comfortable place to be. This little bit has just been a little bit bumpy, which I did feel through the bike a touch. But yeah, I'm certainly finding this an easy ride. So I didn't really get to do the 70 mile an hour bit just because there was roadworks and there's a 50 mile an hour limit. However, having ridden for a short distance at 50 miles an hour, there's a few things that cross my mind. Firstly, the riding position, it's very upright. It's like sitting on a chair. It's very comfortable. Your thighs are almost horizontal, or at least mine are. I do feel like my hands are quite close to my knees, which is slightly odd if you're used to a more sort of forward motorcycle position. And at low speed, it's perfect. It really is quite a nice place to be. There's a little wedge that just pushes up against the bottom of your back so you don't slide backwards. I think if you're doing a lot of sort of 50 mile an hour plus riding, you'll probably find that the wind on your upper body actually does push you back a little. And because of where your hands are near your knees, I think that would over time give you a backache, or at least it would me. If you're shorter, it's probably less of a problem. I'm 6'1", and riding this right now I can feel that at speed that I am slightly further back than I would like to be. Having said that, this is a minor thing. This is not a showstopper. It's not a massive criticism. It's just what I'm feeling right now. Now, I think most people aren't going to buy this as a long-distance tourer. If that is your thing and you fancy having a twist and go, I know that there are other bikes available. BMW themselves do the 650, which would have been fun to try, but they didn't have one. And I know that Honda do the Africa Twin with a DCT, and also various other bikes with a DCT. Me personally, I quite like gears. Just because I like to have that control, I like to use the engine braking, and I don't mind changing gear, and with quick shifters up and down it's hardly an effort these days. Having said that, if I lived in a city, or even if I lived in a town, I had a short distance to commute, I didn't want to go through the palaver of getting full waterproofs on whenever I wanted to go anywhere, which is I think why a lot of these scooters are used, then yeah, I think this is great. There is another scooter I'd quite like to try, and I know there's a local dealer that does Vespers where they have a 300 GT, which I guess is probably a competitor to this. It doesn't have the futuristic looks that the BMW has. I know this is kind of trying to look a little bit like a GS, which is why it has the X in the name. Probably has the word active in its marketing description somewhere. But that aside, it's a perfectly acceptable way to travel, and I am quite enjoying myself. Right, the next bit is going to be a bit through the city, so I'm just coming up to Sheffield. The sun is still shining. I can see those clouds on the horizon over the Peak District, so when I get there we'll see what that's like. I do have all my waterproofs on today, but it'll be good to see what this is like in the wet. City speeds, it certainly accelerates quick enough. You know, I don't think I've opened the throttle up all the way from a standstill. I'm assuming it wouldn't just tip me off the back. But yeah, it's certainly got enough, and it's just the smallest of twists just to get it straight up to 30 miles an hour, which I guess is what it will be used for a lot of the time. So my thoughts are riding this bike around the city. I mean, you can tell that this is where it's very much at home. It's small enough that it fits through narrow gaps. It's so easy to control. The throttle is very light. You don't have to worry about the clutch. The brakes are very good. And yeah, it's you can really feel the lightness of it. And I know that I've just come off a GS before riding this, so anything's going to feel light. But yeah, it feels very light. The turning is very sharp. I know those small wheels do feel a bit bumpy on sort of bumpy tarmac. But I guess that also helps with keeping a small turning circle, and that city handling that is really useful. I do keep reaching for the clutch that isn't there, which is quite annoying, I'm sure, for the drivers behind me as well as for me. Must remember, no clutch. At least on the electric bike there wasn't a clutch lever. Here the clutch is the rear brake. And those clouds are getting darker. So the city of Sheffield, which I'm currently riding through, which is near to where I live, is quite a hilly place. You know, there's plenty of opportunities for hill starts, and just to have to, you know, pull up a hill at these sort of 30 mile an hour speeds. Having said that, this is just working really well. Not once I kind of felt it was a bit down on power to get up, and it shouldn't be. You know, it is a 400, so it's not like I'm trying to expect a 125, especially a low-powered 125, to pull me up these hills. So certainly at the, you know, for 30 mile an hour speeds and up, it's just, yeah, it's got more than enough. So I'm just heading out into the countryside now. I am stuck behind this lorry, which is a little annoying, but around this bend there's a couple of overtaking opportunities, so we'll see what this little 400 will do. I think definitely sort of overtaking speeds getting up past 50 in a short enough distance to be safe overtaking on these roads might be a bit much of an ask. Well, I was able to get past both that truck and a bus. It has started raining, so the roads are wet now, but nevertheless I can enjoy the road down from Fox House to Surprise View, if you know where this is, and tell you a bit more about what it's like on twisty lanes. So I think for these sort of downhill bits, just having the confidence in the brakes, you know, just to be able to just give a very small dab of the rear brake, because there isn't a great deal of engine braking, just makes for a much easier ride. So yeah, I'd say it does inspire confidence. I've not felt like anything is slipping or anything is moving underneath me yet, even though the roads are very wet and slightly greasy. You can see now as I speed up that the rain is really starting to come down a bit more heavily. Hopefully it's not obscuring the camera too much. One thing I do notice on this road at this speed is that it is very blustery. You don't actually get that much protection from the windshield. Now, I'm sure that there's bigger aftermarket ones available, and if you're doing a lot of journeys at these sorts of speeds in this sort of weather, then I think a bigger windscreen really would be essential. On these sort of rolling bends like that, it really does inspire confidence. I know I keep using that term, so it's probably a bit annoying by now, but yeah, it's very easy to bike to ride like this. I did wonder whether the small wheels would take too much away from it, and you know, you can feel that they are small. You can feel that it's got that very fast steering, which I suspect means that if you're really pushing on, you just have to be extremely careful. But for most of the country lanes that I've done so far, it's been admirable and quite fun. I did think it was a slightly odd choice when they asked me what I could take from any of the bikes that BMW currently make, and I don't think that many people ask for this that often. But yeah, I'm quite glad I did. It's been nice to try something different for a few hours. So right now I'm just coming out of the village of Hathersage, which is a 30-mile-an-hour limit, and I'll shortly be hitting a 60-mile-an-hour stretch just along the road up towards Bamford. So even though I couldn't go a bit quicker earlier, I can have a go now, and this is the roll on from 30 up to 60. That's still not full throttle, that's still not pinned. Okay, and now that's full throttle. And as you can see, that really does get up to speed pretty quickly. The cars that were behind me have pretty much disappeared off into the distance. Okay, so that's at 60 miles an hour, almost 60, there we go, that's at 60. So it is quite blustery, you know, I am feeling that tiny little windscreen on the front. I can hear there is quite a bit of engine noise, but it's not loud, like a loud exhaust on a larger capacity motorbike. It does feel quite stable. You know, this isn't the smoothest of roads, but it's also not the bumpiest. So, oops, a little bit too much. I think that's calibrated a bit high. But yeah, it will certainly do 60 with ease and with comfort. I think if you're going to do a long motorway journey, this probably isn't the ideal bike, but it would certainly do it, and one with a bigger windshield would be even better. I am quite tempted now to go back and try the C650 GT just to see how that would compare. Certainly have some interesting weather at the moment. The roads are dry. It has just been raining quite heavily for a few moments. Up there is a touch of blue sky, and I can see that the hills on the south side of the Edale Valley, some of them are in sunshine, but with this really dark black cloud overhead. So, you know, English weather. So I'm now on the country lanes proper. You might recognise this from some of the other videos that I've done. This is the road that goes from Hathersage up to Burbage Bridge. And I picked this road for test rides because it's really bumpy. I mean, it is tarmacked all the way up. And I don't know if you can see the undulations where the water's collecting, but it really isn't a particularly smooth surface. So if you want to find out how good the suspension is on a bike, how good it damps, or how well it damps, then this is an ideal place to do it. I'll be honest, this suspension does feel a little bit basic. I don't expect it's normally needed to cope with things like this. You know, these bikes are made as city bikes, but I think that as I'm going over every bump, I really do feel it. It's not a particularly fancy setup. It does have a conventional front fork and a monoshock at the back. I don't think there's any fancy electronic damping or anything like that. But then again, for the price and for what it's for, it's not really needed. I do feel like this is pushing it a bit, but it is good to know how it copes. Now this bit in particular, I'll try and keep talking because what you can't see in the road you can probably pick up from my voice when that changes, or just seeing just how much the bike is bouncing. Oh, there we go, that felt like it was a long way down. Yeah, it's not the finest suspension ever, but then this is a city scooter, so I think it's probably fine for that. There's another bumpy bit coming up just through here. There's one, two, repaved it. So yeah, the suspension is not advanced. I suspect on every other scooter like this at this price point, it's very comparable. The only thing is I haven't ridden any others to actually do a comparison, so I shall do that, and then at some point I'll come back and think about how all the others compare back to this and to each other. Halfway round, so I'm up at Burbage Bridge now, so it's I'll give you just a few numbers about it. So it makes about 34 horsepower, which isn't a huge amount, especially through that gearbox, but it seems to do enough. What else? It's about 204 kilos, so I actually thought it was lighter than that. I think because all the weight is so low down, it is quite easy to manoeuvre, but 204 kilos is not light by any measure. A few other things I found, it's got these quite cool little cubby holes either side that locks on the key as well, and you can easily just push the buttons to open them. The one on the right has a USB port, as well as there's somewhere to put it, so it's an easy place for charging your phone. The one on the left is just the compartment. My hands did get a little bit cold while I was out and about, so it was nice to be able to try out the heated grips. 3 settings instead of just the 2 I've got on my GS, and that worked perfectly well. Didn't really need the heated seat, but I did try it, and I can tell you that it is toasty. So yeah, the bike costs about £6,000. I don't think that's a huge amount of money. I think it is more than a lot of other smaller scooters. So if you're looking at 125s or 200s or 250s, it's definitely more expensive than that. But if you're looking at a motorbike to ride around the city and you want a BMW, then yeah, I think it's not terrible value. I would be interested in trying the one with the bigger engine just to see what that's like, but for what I've been riding today, it seems to have done really well. It's got a 12.8 litre fuel tank, which seems to be big enough. You wouldn't have to fill up all the time, and in the current fuel crisis we have in the UK, that's probably no bad thing. Up front it's got 2 265mm discs. It's just got one at the back, but the stopping and power on it seems to be just fine. The controls are easy to use, and actually the braking has given me a lot of confidence as I've been riding. When I rode it earlier, I did say it had a conventional fork and a monoshock at the back. That's incorrect. It's a conventional fork and a twin shock at the rear. The fork's a 35mm, and it does the job all right. It's not fancy. Doesn't do. It's definitely not up there with bikes that are far more expensive. But for what it is, it seems to do an admirable job. Right then, I think that's enough talking. I'm going to get back on it. I'm just up at the Burbage Valley, as you can see at the moment. I'm going to get back on it. I'm going to ride it back. Hopefully, going to find some petrol on my way back, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. So I have been pleasantly surprised by this C400X. It's not really the sort of bike that I'd ever thought about owning. I live in the middle of the countryside. I have good biking roads all around me, and a geared bike is perfect for that. This really isn't what this is made for. Having said that, it has been quite fun. Not sure I'll get one, not because it's not very good, but mainly because I don't really need one. It doesn't really suit where I am. Having said that, I am interested in riding the competition now. I know Honda make their X Adventure. I know that there's that Vespa I mentioned earlier. I think there's also, even the small Hondas. I know that there's the new 125, the new Cub that they've got, which I've never ridden, and I'm slightly curious to find out what it's like. I know some people have done some amazing things with them and gone to some amazing places. So yeah, I have been enjoying my C300 rally over the last 8 months, which is only less than 300 cc's, makes less power than this does. And just because it's so much smaller than the other bikes that I have doesn't mean that it's any less fun. And this is exactly the same. It's a very different experience. It's not like riding the CRF 300. It's definitely nothing like riding my GS. But I can definitely imagine it. If you live somewhere where you just need to have it as a quick mode of transport, and you want a few refinements like the heated seat and the heated grips, I'm sure the TFT will do the BMW nav as well, then yeah, I think this is an excellent choice. I quite look forward to riding the 650, which I mentioned earlier, so I'm sure I'll do a video on that when I do. Right now I'm about 12 miles from the dealer. I have 13 miles of fuel left, and every petrol station I've been past so far has been empty, so I'm kind of hoping that I find some fuel in Sheffield, and either that I roll back in still with a bit in the tank, and hopefully that I don't run out just before I get there. I found some petrol, which is nice. I was about 6 miles from the dealer with a range of 5 miles, and I managed to find some, so I'm back up to 79 miles, so I can relax a bit. There is no fuel running out anxiety, and now I know where I can go and fill up on my way back with my GS. One thing I have noticed about the bike, or rather I hadn't noticed it, but the fact that I hadn't noticed it made me notice it, is that it's really smooth. I'm guessing it's a single. I will look it up when I get back, but the engine really is silky smooth. speed. There's none of the vibrations or that sort of single feeling that I get from my CRF 300. So yeah, clearly they've done something with it to either to take that out or to just to temper it so you don't notice it. Yeah, even under quite hard acceleration, it's just very, very smooth. And I think I've talked a few times about how it just feels very stable, very planted, very easy to ride. And I think having that sort of engine that behaves in this way just helps with all of that feel. So yeah, it's an odd thing. But yeah, I hadn't thought previously to call out that it doesn't vibrate as much as I thought it would. One other thing I noticed, and it's a change to riding position if you're used to riding a geared bike, is that yeah, if you just tuck your knees in, there's actually quite a lot of space for your feet, which just gets the whole lower part of your body out of the wind. And I guess if you're travelling where you're doing short journeys where maybe you're not wearing your full gear all the time, you do get a lot of protection, certainly on the lower half of your body, even if there isn't the same protection from the upper fairing or the windscreen. I'm almost back at the dealer, so I'll park it up then, and then I'll tell you what my final thoughts are. So I'm back from my test ride on the BMW C400X. It was a huge amount of fun. If you're looking for a twist and go with a few more luxuries, I think you can do a lot worse. I've done a mix of dual carriageways, motorways, city riding and country lanes, and I think if most of your riding is less than 50 miles an hour with the occasional bit above it, then I think it's a really good solution. I like all the little bits in it where you can keep stuff without needing extra luggage. The fact you can put a helmet on it under the seat when you're parked up is ideal, I think, if you're nipping into a town somewhere. So yeah, I'll edit this video together and put it up, but it's been thoroughly enjoyable, and now I get to ride my R1250 GS back home to the Peak District in the sunshine. Thanks for watching. I hope this has been interesting and useful. If it has, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. So getting back on my GS for the ride home, yeah, you do realise that actually having that on that little C400X, the power just is incomparable to what it is on a bigger bike. But you know what, they're for very different things. If I was lived in a city and all I was doing was just short journeys here then everywhere, the GS is a bit of a brute to drag around. I know the GS is only 50 kilos heavier, but it just has so much more power. And if you're crossing countries or doing a long tour, then I'm sure the C400X will become, well, it's just not the right bike for it. There is no unicorn bike that does everything well. And as a city bike, I think the C400X is great. And I think for nearly everything else, I'm quite happy with my 1250. So if I do get a twist and go, it definitely won't be replacing this. It will probably be an as well as, or just something to try for a while. Anyway, ride safe. Cheers.